Hello and welcome back to another episode of the NXT Podcast. I'm your host, Skelly Bones, here on the No Holds Barred Network, bringing you all the news, reviews, and more when it comes to NXT Live every Wednesday on the USA Network. So, I've been gone for a couple of weeks, guys. I apologize, but I've had some personal family issues to deal with, but now I'm back in the game and ready to recap some of the stuff that I've missed, and I definitely missed a lot of shit. Pretty much starting with the Saudi show on. Yeah, let's see. I won't get into all of it now. First off, I'm going to start with the recap of the latest episode of NXT, the November 11th episode of NXT. And, after that, I'll kind of get back into some of the more interesting news and bits of backstage drama that I've missed. All right, so starting off with the November 11th episode of NXT. We open with a recap of the OC last week beating up the Undisputed Era. AJ and the OC came and invaded NXT, pretty much laid out all the Undisputed Era, and then they ended up having a a three-way match with Tommaso Ciampa, Matt Riddle, and Keith Lee. And we open with the first match of the night, the Cruiserweight Championship match, Angel Garza versus the champion, Lio Rush. Crowd was super hot for this whole match. Crowd loves Angel Garza. They also love Lio Rush, but Garza is such an interesting character because he's a heel, but he's so over, you might as well make him a babyface. Though he is a pretty good cocky heel, but the crowd has pretty much turned this guy. Anyways, this was a pretty good match. I had a couple of issues with some aspects of it. Really, with Lio, as much as I loved the come up when he hit it on Oni Lorcan, I hate that he attempted it like 3 or 4 times in this match. I think he only hit it once, and every time he went for it, the guy was on like the other end of the ring. It's like, that works better as a move that comes out of nowhere than something that looks like you're trying to set it up. And there was the one time he hit it and it was blocked. I thought he was going to go for a 619 because he had Angel Garza on the other side of the ropes. And then he runs to the bottom rope on the other side and tries to do the come up. It was, I don't know. That kind of took me off. Other than that, the match was pretty much as good as you would expect it to be. You got 2 really good workers in there. I am really turning the corner on Garza just because I didn't much care for him to begin with. I kind of thought he was just like, he got such a huge reaction, and I was like, why? This guy, he wasn't doing anything for me. Like the pants gimmick, I didn't much dig it, but seeing how well he works and just the natural charisma he has, I do like Garza. I think he has a really bright future ahead of him. This match finished with Lio hitting 2 frog splashes, and on the second one, Garza had his foot on the ropes, but still got counted for a 3, and that kind of led to him arguing at the end of the match, and I feel like this is going to lead to just a rematch, possibly on 205 Live. Hopefully not. Hopefully back at NXT, but we'll see what happens with that. Then we get into our second match. It is Aaliyah versus Xia Li. Basically a squash match. Again, Xia Li has potential, but just did not look that great. Also, you're working with Aaliyah, who is been there forever and is still mediocre at best. And also, I don't want to sound rude, but she looked like she lost a lot of weight, and it looked like almost like she had been sick or something. I don't know. Maybe her makeup was weird or her tan was different, but I don't know. She looks very skinny, and I don't think she really was all that big to begin with, so I didn't think she needed to lose any more weight. So that's just my personal opinion on that. I don't know if there's anything going on with her or what her situation is, but hope she's all right. Anyways, this match was brutal. She ended up taking Xia Li's spinning heel kick to the face, and even though she had her hands up to block, Still got her nose busted. That just kind of goes to show how hard that kick came at her. And yeah, she looked like she was pretty badly busted up after this match. Xia Li won. It was okay. Nobody really cared. Then we got a Pete Dunne, Killian Dane hype vid, and Finn Balor comes out and cuts a heel promo. He starts calling out Matt Riddle, who then attacks him. Balor flees. Matt Riddle calls him a little putz. Then the Undisputed Era come out. They begin to encircle Riddle. Ciampa and Keith Lee come out for the save. A whole bunch of shit's going on right now. Then you have Lee calls out Cole. Strong defends Cole, says he'll fight for him instead. So now we have our third match of the night, Roderick Strong versus Keith Lee. And my takeaway is I think Strong may be the best seller in the WWE. He always has great matches. He's very much the Dean Malenko of this generation to me. He's actually a little better on the mic than Dean was, in my opinion, but he's so good in the ring. Like, everything he does looks good. And I still hate his little boots, but other than that, you can't deny that he's a hell of a worker. And Keith Lee and him had a great match. Keith Lee is also awesome. And when you got somebody who can play off of Lee so well, I think the big man, little man match, even though Strong didn't really play the little man, if you will, I feel like those dynamics are better than seeing Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic 7 times. I know that's a spectacle, but that's something I only want to see once or twice a year, you know? Anyways, very good match. It felt like it was going a little bit long, and actually right as I was typing that out in my notes, like I felt like, oh, I feel like this is going long, the Undisputed Era came out, and again, this turned into an insane outside brawl, basically. So while the match is still going on, you have the Undisputed Era outside. Then you have Tommaso and Riddle come out and beat up the Undisputed Era. While they're taking them out, Finn comes back out and gives Riddle a sling blade, then a drop kick into the stairs. Basically kills Riddle. And again, all this is happening while this match is technically still going on in the ring. And they're not even showing any of it. You see, I think Lee gets distracted briefly, and then everything was cut straight to the outside action. You didn't see what was going on in the ring. I'm assuming they were just catching their breath, I guess. Once all this craziness is done outside the ring, you finally get Lee hitting his finish on Strong. They basically just called it a jackhammer. They didn't call it the BBC, the Big Bang Catastrophe. So they may have figured out the implications to that one. So let's see if it's called the jackhammer going forward now. Then once it was over, your Undisputed Era came in. They started beating up Lee and Ciampa, and Dijakovic comes out for the save. And this basically sets up War Games to look like Lee, Dijakovic, Ciampa, and Riddle versus the Undisputed Era. Or so I would think. After the match, we get backstage footage of Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir being laid out backstage. Or already being laid out, not being laid out. And then also Candice LeRae is also knocked out. They don't know what's going on. Everybody's going nuts. Triple H is out there yelling, cover all the entrances, because he's the president. So basically somebody's invaded. Our fourth match, we get Swerve Scott versus Bronson Reed. Two guys really on the come up. Swerve has been winning as of late, on a bit of a win streak, and has looked really good in all of his matches. Bronson's actually lost to Matt Riddle, I believe a week or two ago, but had a really great showing in that match, and that helped him out a lot, giving him a bit more confidence and putting him over with the crowd. This match was really good, basically showcasing Reed, in my opinion. I think he took about 85% of it, with a lot of his power moves and his, I believe it was either Nigel or Morrow, described one of his sit-down, bonsai as John Tenta-like, and that's really a perfect comparison for Bronson Reed. He is very John Tenta-like. He's a big boy, he knows how to work, and he can do some athletic stuff, but he doesn't overdo it. He uses his size to his advantage, which is nice to see. Again, not to hate on Keithleen Dijakovic, but I don't need 350-pounders doing standing Spanish flies and moonsaults every single match. I like to see a guy that can throw his weight around while staying on the ground. Also, Bronson hit one of the most insane-looking moves I've ever seen. I believe Morrow called it a Mori driver, but it basically looked like he was going for the Deadeye, like the reverse tombstone. But basically just let Swerve go and dropped him on his head completely and dropped down with him. That was just a brutal looking move. I thought that was the finish. Hopefully never do that again. Anyways, these guys had a really good match. Like I said, Reed took most of it. Then it got a little more back and forth towards the end. And you had Scott winning with his jumping toe kick. And afterwards, both men shook hands and showed a sign of respect. Match 5, we have Pete Dunne versus Killian Dane. Before the match could even start, Damian Priest came out and attacked both guys. First, he laid out Killian Dane from behind while he was making his entrance. Then him and Dunne started brawling. Dane got back up, and it just turned into a huge slobber knocker. You had some of the security geeks out there taking a couple bumps, and then you got to see Damian Priest hit a big springboard tope and kind of ended up standing tall. So this leads me to believe we're going to be seeing a triple threat at War Games with Killian Dane, Damian Priest, and Pete Dunne. I could be wrong. It could be on NXT in the next week, but we'll see what happens. I actually would like to see these three guys in a match. I would almost like to see just Damian Priest and Dane in a kind of a hoss fight. Not that adding Dunne would take anything away, but I think those two guys could have a pretty good feud. And almost I care too much about Dunne. I'd rather see him a little bit higher up than having to get stuck with some of the... I don't know. Dane I'm not a fan of, and I feel like they're making him sort of like a mid-card boss. And I think Priest is getting a bigger push, so we'll see what happens. But I'm still not totally sold on him as a personality yet. I think his in-ring is fine and decent enough for a heel, but I don't think his promo skills are all that great, and his presence to me is just kind of blah. So we'll see what happens going forward. Again, I think they're going to have probably a decent three-way if that does happen. And then after this, we got a quick promo with Mia Yim backstage before her match, and Dakota Kai basically comes in and just is like the saddest looking girl. Like, I have no sympathy for Dakota Kai at all, and she always looks so defeated. It's like, I just turn her heel, please, already. I was kind of hoping that would happen at this match. But anyway, she came in and said something. I didn't even really care. It was whatever. Mia Yim versus Io Shirai in a women's ladder match for the women's war game advantage. Why this needed to be a ladder match with a briefcase, I have no clue. This feels like more like main roster BS being added to NXT for no reason. I feel like this could have just been a straight match and the winner gets the advantage. Like, that's simple enough. I don't know why you would have to need to climb the ladder and get the briefcase. I guess WWE has some sort of hard-on for fucking briefcases and contracts and shit. This was a good match. This was also an extremely dangerous match. For anybody talking shit about Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega, I guarantee you Mia Yim was in way worse shape than either of those guys after this match. Jesus Christ, she took a beating. First, she had I believe there was a nasty bump on the outside during the beginning of the match, but she ended up taking a springboard dropkick from Io Shirai while she was still holding the ladder up to her face, and that looked like it looked like it busted the top of her head open or something. I wasn't really sure, but it looked like she was bleeding pretty nasty from that one. And then afterwards, she's climbing the ladder and ends up taking one of the sickest looking bumps I've ever seen. It was like a WrestleMania bump. Off the top of the ladder, through the ladder that was set up on the ring and on the apron and on the barricade. So she goes not only from the top of the ladder straight to the ground, but through a wooden ladder on the way down. It looked devastating. Like I couldn't believe they were doing this much. Like I hope Mia's okay. I haven't heard any injury reports yet, which is insane, but thank God. I couldn't believe that she took that bump. So mad respect to Miam. I may not be her biggest fan, but there's no denying that this chick definitely has balls and is not scared. So I wish her the best. I hope she's okay, and I'll be excited to see what kind of crazy crap they're gonna do with the War Games match. The end of this match got kind of crazy. Also, it was going about 22, 23 minutes long or so. So it felt a little bit long for me. And also once Mia got busted, it kind of started to slow down because you had doctors and stuff in the ring trying to keep her from bleeding all over the place. And also have Io, as slowly as possible, try and set up the ladder and climb it so she could still get stopped by Mia. But of course, these are the problems with live TV, and shit happens. I mean, that's what you got to deal with. If you get busted open, you got to keep going. Or it could be that, what are you going to do? It could have been just the end of the match there, but they ended up continuing, and you had Dakota Kai come out, and she took Io Shirai off the ladder with a power bomb, and then threw Mia into the ring to help get her the win. And you actually had the crowd boo Dakota a little bit when she came in to take Io off the ladder, just because I think Io's another one where she's a heel, but she's so over because she's the best worker in the women's division, basically. And Dakota's Dakota, who I think the majority of people kind of feel like me. They don't really care about Dakota. I don't know. Maybe that's just me projecting. But so anyways, Dakota power bombs Io off the ladder, rolls out and throws Mia into the ring, and the crowd's cheering her on. Then the NXT UK Women's Champion Kaylee Ray runs out, throws Dakota into the stairs, then goes into the ring and pushes Mia off the ladder into that insane ladder spot that I was talking about earlier. I mean, again, I can't overstate how crazy that bump is. So then Io comes back in, climbs the ladder, gets the briefcase. Advantage War Games to Team Baszler. And it looks like Kaylee Ray is going to be filling out the 4-woman team. So you have Shayna Baszler, Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, and Kaylee Ray. And Shayna's standing at the top of the ramp, cheering on and applauding her team for doing a good job. And before we cut to the end of the show, who comes out and attacks Shayna but Bayley from SmackDown? Who was it that had invaded? It was Bayley all along. Bayley killed all the women. And she hit Shayna with a chair, gave her, God, what was it called? The Overdrive, I believe, like MVP's weird finisher. The forward reverse DDT, I don't know. Then she got ran off by the rest of the women. And then we cut to commercial, and then that was the end of the show. And overall, I think this was a very good NXT. The ladder match was an insane way to end it. Like I said, that freaking Miam bump spot was more than enough to spike a rating or two and definitely get people talking. The opener was great. I love the Angel Garza Leo Rush match. I had my little nitpicks here and there, but overall did enjoy that match. I think the Bronson Reed Swerve Scott match was really good. And Roderick Strong and Keith Lee was my favorite match of the night. I think, you get Strong in there and you already have, probably your top 2 or 3 workers in NXT. And then Keith Lee, who is also a fantastic worker, and those guys had a great match together. They have great chemistry. There was a whole lot of shenanigans after the match, setting up all these War Games things and setting up the Riddle Finn match. Oh, also, yeah, which I completely forgot. They announced that it's going to be Finn versus Riddle at War Games, and now we don't know who's going to take Riddle's spot in the men's War Games. So it'll be Keith Lee, Dijakovic, and Ciampa, and someone to be named later. So we'll see who the surprise man is. Whether they're gonna announce it on next week's NXT or save it for the pay-per-view. We'll see what they decide to do. I don't know who it could really be. There's a multitude of guys you could put in there. And I think there's plenty of guys that are looking for that main event push right now. So going forward in the next week, I really am excited to see who this fourth man is going to be, or at least who's going to try and make a claim for it. Again, like I said, very good match of NXT. Very good episode of NXT. The only really down for me was the Xia Li Aaliyah match, and that was just a little quick squash, so that was fine. Overall, I give it a thumbs up for sure, and can't wait to see what happens next week leading into War Games. So again, like I said, I have been gone for a couple of weeks, so I did miss a little bit of stuff. The women's War Games was announced, which the first women's War Games, that'll be pretty crazy. You had NXT invading SmackDown, and then, of course, the OC and AJ invading NXT the next week, or the same week. AEW put on Full Gear, their first pay-per-view since being on television. And then we had the dual controversies of both the Saudi hostage flight situation, where all the wrestlers got stuck in Saudi Arabia for like an extra 27 hours or something like that until they could fly home, which in turn caused the entire NXT invasion of SmackDown to happen in the first place, because all the talent was stuck in Saudi Arabia, so they had to figure out something to do. It's just kind of funny how these things all sort of play out. Definitely, that was a really weird and interesting situation. Got to see a lot of different takes online of that one, and just a lot of social media from the wrestlers themselves after that whole fiasco. So, yeah, the Saudi Arabia bad. No good. They don't like that. No good. The Crown Jewel show itself was pretty much garbage, as is most of the freaking Saudi shows, in my opinion. It's just spectacle for spectacle's sake, with no real concern for any storylines that are going on in the main roster or on TV at the time. It's pretty much just, let's get as many big names for the Prince as we can, and then put as many giant guys and battle royals and crazy crap we can do. It's whatever. They're getting paid their money for it, so they're going to do it. It's going to happen whether I like it or not. So I'm not going to enjoy it. I don't have to watch it. I don't give a shit. Crown Jewel sucks. There you go. That's my hot take on Saudi Arabia. And also, along with that whole BS, we also had the Jordan Miles T-shirt fiasco, where WWE decided to release one of the most racist looking shirts I've ever seen. And I know people are going to say, well, they took it down right away, and you can defend that, yeah, once once it was addressed, they got rid of it. But this is something that should have never even gotten to the point of like, oh yeah, maybe this is a good idea. Like past the drawing board stage, this shirt should have been shit canned. And you can tell me, oh, first they saw it on a white background or they saw it on a gray background. And that's fine, whatever. That's how it would have came out. It still is a crappy design, in my opinion, and NXT shirts are pretty crappy to begin with. But you see that as soon as you see it on a black shirt, it's like, oh no, we probably shouldn't do that. That might be a bad decision. But apparently, no. Not one person decided that was maybe not do that. So, anyways, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you've heard about it already. There was a crazy, Jordan went on a crazy tirade after this, basically denouncing WWE, calling them racist, which is not entirely untrue in my opinion. If you look at Kofi's 7-second little squash match with Brock. Not saying that was because of race, but if you look at the history of WWE and the way they've treated people of color, it's clear to see that they don't hold them in the highest regard, or haven't, at least, for a very long time. And that's their own history. I mean, that's not me, trying to paint it in a bad light. Go look at Raw from 98 and 99 and tell me about the Nation of Domination and wrestlers doing blackface, freaking DX, and I can't, I'm a hypocrite to say I didn't laugh. And, I laughed back then and it was funny. And it's still funny now. It's super inappropriate and shouldn't be on TV. I did laugh at it though, so I can't, I can't say that I don't know. I'm not, whatever. All right, that probably sounds bad. Whatever. I'm not racist. I love black people. I love you, Jordan Miles. Anyways, yeah, this whole situation got out of hand. Miles tweeted that just a multitude of things, calling out Jay Lethal as an Uncle Tom, which a lot of people turned on him for that one, which I can understand because you're bringing other people into something, and that's a guy who's not even in the same company as you. And he was talking a lot about ROH, and Jordan, while I respected his opinion and do respect him still, I feel he really burned bridges that he didn't need to burn. I think maybe he let his anger get the better of him in some of those situations. And we know social media is not the best place, especially if you've ever been drinking and tweeting. It's a bad call usually. And when you're angry, it doesn't get any better. Hopefully all is well with Jordan. He did tweet out that he is done with WWE. As far as I know, they haven't released him, and there's been no new information about that yet. But whatever happens to him in the future, I hope he gets to wrestle somewhere. He is obviously talented. He's an amazing worker, and hopefully he gets to go somewhere where he can be showcased and also can be happy and proud of what he's doing. So best of luck to Jordan Miles or ACH, whatever he's gonna go by in the future. And hope he has a couple good mental health days coming up, Get his mind right. All right, so to finish off the show, we're going to go with my favorite segment. I'm glad we can bring this back on my first show back. The Wednesday Night Wars, where we get into the AEW versus NXT ratings and break it down and see what we're looking at here. So we're in week 7. AEW has won every week thus far. And actually, if you go on my Twitter page, at Skelly Bones on Twitter, or at TheNXT Podcast on Twitter, you can see a sweet graph that I posted up. My homemade, super scientific graph depicting the ratings and what we're looking like. And anyways, this week's NXT ratings were not all that great. You had NXT doing 750,000 total viewers, and AEW did 957,000 total viewers. So again, AEW wins the night in total viewership. Again, pretty handily, looking like they're winning the war, though. Last week was the closest it's ever been. Last week was 813 to 822. And I really thought this week was going to be pretty close as well. I felt like last week, even though it was kind of helped with some heavy sports competition, that it did level the playing field a bit. And I was hoping to see NXT get more of a spike this week, but again, they dropped. So going from 813 and dropping down, as opposed to NXT going from 822 and then rising back up to 957,000. I'm a little disappointed because I do think it was a good show, and AEW put on a good show as well. Some may say better. I don't think it was that much better. I think you had maybe some, I would say promo-wise, you definitely had some more memorable promos on AEW with MJF and Jericho. But overall match quality, I think people are kind of overlooking how good the matches in NXT have been. We've been getting really good matches, and AEW just has the better atmosphere, and I can't deny it. Like, being in those arenas and hearing the crowd, like, it blows full sail out of the water every time. And so even mediocre matches, and some of in my opinion, some of the Rio women's matches have been kind of duds, but the crowd has gotten them over and been so into it that they're willing them to succeed almost. And I guess that's overlapping into viewership as well. They're just getting more eyes on the product. We'll see what happens going forward. I was kind of hoping that we'd get more to the, battling around the million mark maybe between the two of them, but it looks like NXT is really going to struggle if they ever get to the chance to hit that million mark. They're going to really need to do a lot more. We'll see what happens in the coming months, though. Like I said, we're still only in week 7. We're barely 2 months into the Wednesday Night Wars, but we have a whole lot still to come. So I think that about wraps it up here on the NXT podcast. I've been your host, Skelly Bones. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Skelly Bones and follow the podcast at TheNXT Podcast. Make sure to follow the No Holds Barred Network at NHB Network. Make sure to follow the All Elite Podcast at All Elite Pod. That's our sister podcast where they focus on All Elite Wrestling. Hosted by at Real Kyle Masters and at Loves to Dream. That's Kyle and Tiff. You can check them out. They actually just have a really good post Full Gear review. Both those guys got to go to Full Gear and did their own podcast afterwards. So if you want to get a rundown and a review of Full Gear and a rundown of this week's AEW, make sure to check out the All Elite Pod. And again, thanks from me, Skelly, and I will see you guys next week after the go-home show for NXT War Games.